Okay guys, this is part 2 looking at the MAF Manager. So we're going to go into a bit more detail of the settings and the features that it has. If you just want to see the basic introduction to the MAF Manager, you can check part 1, link to that is in the video description. So we've just connected to the unit as normal. We covered the set menu in the first video, so we won't go into that again. But what we'll do, we'll go into the cal menu. So this is, we get the bad arguments here when the numbers in the app are getting populated. So this is entirely normal. Just skip past this until we have figures in all the relevant parts of the app. So the cal menu. This is where we can connect the MAF Manager to a signal from a wideband lambda sensor, and specifically this product has been designed to work with Innovate Motorsports products. So if you have chosen to do that, then you have access to the Autotune feature. So we have use wideband yes or no. So obviously if it's no, the unit is only going to use the figures in the set menu, and if you have it set to yes, then after 5 minutes of the engine being on, the unit will then, the MAF Manager will then start to monitor the air fuel ratio coming from the wideband lambda sensor, and then customize the MAF sensor signal to achieve the target AFRs that you have set. So you can see here we've got 3 sectors: idle AFR, low load AFR, and high load AFR. And then under that we've got target with the plus or minus to the left. So here we just set what target AFR that we want. So for example, for the idle AFR we have a target of 14.9. For low load AFR we have a target of 14.6. And for high load AFR we have a target AFR of 13.1. If you want to change that, we can just do plus or minus here. These multiplier numbers will change then as you drive, if they need to achieve the target AFRs that you need. So when you come to a standstill at the end of the session, you can have a quick check of the multipliers here and see how they compare to the ones that you have put in the set menu, and they should be relatively close to each other. If they're not, you can adjust the values in the set menu to more closely match the numbers that the Autotune figures are getting. So we have a tolerance here on the multipliers. So for the idle AFR, it'll go plus or minus 7% of the set menu. So for example, we have it set at 0.8. Under Autotune conditions, the maximum multiplier that the MAF Manager will use is 0.87, and the minimum is 0.73. For low load and high load, the tolerance is 10%. So for example, low load multiplier is 0.84. The maximum multiplier that the MAF Manager will use is 0.94, and the minimum is 0.74, and it's 10% also for a high load multiplier. So you should have the saved multipliers should be relatively close to the Autotune numbers. I would say within 3.03. So this is your cal menu. One thing to note: once you select yes or no, this is saved in the unit. Then you can switch off the car's ignition, leave the car, come back to the car, and it will remember what you selected. So when you switch the engine on the next time, it will have use wideband as yes, and then after 5 minutes it will start the auto tuning function. However, if the engine is on and you switch this use wideband from no to yes, it will automatically start using the wideband lambda sensor signal to tune the engine immediately. So we've just put a note here: note only switch to yes when the engine is fully up to temperature, because obviously we don't need the MAF Manager to start tuning the car when the engine is cold. Then we have something in the MAF menu, and this allows us to do a number of things. First of all, we've got an option here, MAF Lock yes or no. If we select MAF Lock yes, then we can clamp the maximum MAF voltage that the MAF Manager will ever send to the car's ECU. So in this case we've set it at 4.85 volts. So you might use this if your car's ECU has a maximum MAF limit of say 4.5 volts. If it gets more than 4.5 volts from the MAF sensor, it may trigger a check engine light, for example. Whatever the case may be, you have the option there to set the maximum MAF voltage that the MAF Manager will ever send to your car's ECU. If you want to use it, put MAF Lock to yes. If you don't want to use that, just put MAF Lock to no. Personally, I don't see any reason not to use it, and on this specific car I'm using 4.85 volts. And then underneath then we have we can clamp the voltage that the MAF Manager sends to the car's ECU. So we can send a fixed voltage to the car's ECU regardless of the MAF sensor signal that we're receiving from the MAF sensor. So we've got two stages to this. First of all, we set the threshold where we want to trigger the fixed voltage, and then we set what fixed voltage we actually want. So if we come out of MAF menu, go into the map menu, again we get these bad arguments until the figures are populated. So this is where we set our threshold. So we've got an idle stabilization threshold and a gear stabilization threshold. On a normal car, you would not need to use these features at all. So on this car I don't, and I've set the idle stabilization to gear stabilization to a sensor voltage, which I know I will never see in normal driving. So that's disabled the feature. If however you want to enable it, you set the percentage or voltage that is going to be the trigger voltage for the idle MAF voltage. So I would recommend setting this at least 0.5 to 1% below the lowest idle MAF voltage that you see, because you do not want this sending a fixed MAF voltage to the car if the engine is running properly. I've got no guarantees that this will work for you. I'm just saying this is the feature, this is what it does, and then you can experiment to see if it is useful or not for you. So we've got two levels. The first one is idle MAF stabilization, and the next one is gear stabilization, which is designed to be set at a lower level than idle. So for example, if you lift off the throttle at say 6,000 RPM, you're going to get a much bigger vacuum in the engine than you would at idle, like at 700 RPM. So this is for those conditions where you lift off the throttle at high RPM. You can choose to send a fixed voltage to the car's ECU under those conditions, and also, like I said, at idle or close to idle. But you should bear in mind with this that if you've got the Autotune function activated and you're sending a fixed voltage to the car's ECU at idle, there is potential there to have the Autotune fighting your set MAF voltage, the fixed MAF voltage that you're sending to the car's ECU. So that is something to bear in mind. Really, it's an emergency measure, if you like, for the idle. So this is where you set the thresholds. If you close the map menu, open the MAF menu, and this is where we set the actual voltage that we'll send. So MAF clamp voltage at idle. So when the idle voltage, when the idle stabilization goes below is 4.5 or below, then we will send a 0.85 voltage signal to the car's ECU. And if the map signal level goes below 2.5, the MAF Manager will send a 0.79 volt signal to the car's ECU. Like I said, it's a feature in there, guys. Imagine why you would want to use it, but I'm thinking maybe an unstable idle voltage, and maybe if your car is fitted with a blow-off valve. And that is basically it, guys. I'll just run you through the top here. MAF in is obviously the raw signal coming from the MAF sensor on the car. Out actual is the actual measured voltage that we're sending out, and the out requested is the voltage that we've requested. So obviously the out actual and the out requested should be ballpark figure. They're not being updated at the same time, so there could be a difference between those two figures, but this is why it's just for a diagnostic purpose, really. Map explained everything in that. The car menu, I've explained everything in that. and the set menu, we've covered that. And guys, that is basically it. I'll just mention one thing here. X High Load Multiplier. So this is if your MAF signal from the MAF sensor is over 4.85 volts, we have an auxiliary multiplier there that we can use to try and compensate for the fact that the MAF sensor is out of range. To give an example of why this may be useful, MAF that is on the car at the moment is too small, which it's maxed out. So we're receiving in say a 4.5 volt MAF signal. Say when the car is at 5,000 RPM and full throttle. So we've still got another 2,000 RPM to go. For those 2,000 RPM, we can put in like a temporary multiplier, which will be the X High Load Multiplier, to cover those last 2,000 RPM. And we're splitting the High Load Multiplier and the X High Load Multiplier apart from each other, is because we don't want that multiplier that we're using when the MAF sensor signal is maxed out. We don't want that multiplier to be affecting the signal from the MAF sensor when it is operating normally. So we're like quarantining that high load multiplier figure from the situation where the MAF is maxed out. It's a very blunt instrument, guys, and it's definitely not a precise way of doing it, but there is something in there if you find yourself with a maxed out MAF sensor. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you do see that you're getting an X high load multiplier that's different from your high load multiplier, well, that will suggest that there is some issue there with the size of the MAF sensor that you're using. So enough of labouring that point. That is basically the whole unit. We have at the bottom here options, and we've got a few sub options to that. So we've got clock speed here. So depending on your phone, you may find that the buttons communicating with the MAF Manager are a bit sluggish. Personally, I find that the 50 is fine for my use. But if you find that is not sufficient or not correct for your phone, you can experiment with a different clock speed. So you can set it, say, at 25, and then you can see if you get better or worse response from the buttons when you're communicating with a MAF Manager. Guide is basically this video, and then colors. We can change the color of the logo. In the MAF menu, if we go here, we have the bar going back and forth. We can also change the color of that. And then one thing I'd like to add, just to finish off the video, that this app is not really something that you should be using on a regular basis. The app is really just to set the unit up, and then once you've got the parameters set up the way you want it, you don't need to open the app again. You can just use the car as normal and let the app take care of the rest. It's not designed to be a gauge, absolutely not. We deliberately do not put scales on our sensor readings. We deliberately do it for percentage and voltage. Some provisos with the map. The app is open and the phone is connected to the unit. There's going to be communication going between the two units, between the phone and the MAF Manager, and this is going to introduce some delay. Not major delay, we're not talking seconds, but when we're talking about something as sensitive and critical as a MAF sensor signal, that delay can be felt, possibly be felt in the car with just a hesitation. So that's another reason why we just recommend just use the app to set the product up, just to confirm that the settings are correct, and once you've done that, really it's a fit and forget item. You don't need to use the app. So that's it, guys. This is the MAF Manager. We're just putting the final touches, and the first units will be going out middle of May 2019. As always, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave a comment on the MoviChip website. We don't publish those comments, and when you leave your comment, we ask for your email, and so we'll respond to you via email. Makes it nice and quick for you to send us, contact us. Again, link to the MAF Manager in the in the video description, I should say. And if you want some more text about the product, again, MoviChip website will put a detailed breakdown of what the product can do, and then you can see what other products that we've got available also. So as always, if you're not subscribed to the MoviChip channel and you want to see more information about our products, see what's coming up in the pipeline, see the features of our products, then Subscribe to the channel. If you're a subscriber already, thank you for subscribing. Look after yourself, and I'll see you again next time.